Hi, my name's Dan. I hope you're doing really well today. This is part one of a two-parter I'm doing, taking one very simple chord progression built on one scale, and we're going to take 10 different styles. And I'm just going to show you the line exactly so that you've got something to play over these tracks. But then I'm going to break it down, show you some of the techniques behind it, some of the rhythms and some of the theory, so that you can then take these ideas and make your own music with them. So we're going to start off with a blues, well, loosely inspired on a blues feel, and this is what it sounds like. You've probably heard that kind of chord progression before. I'll get into the theory later, but we've got 4 chords: C, G, A minor, F. And here we're just playing the C on the 3rd fret of the A string. This is going to teach you the notes as we go. We'll name the notes since we're using the same ones. There's a C there. G, 3rd fret of the E string. Now, I was playing an A on the 5th fret of the E string. You really want to know that that's an A. But so is the open string A, the same pitch, same note. So you can play the A wherever you want. Now the rhythm, they're all 8th notes, but that little dot is a staccato, which just means really short, and the line underneath means tenuto, which basically means fancy words for just saying long and short and long. And that's the rhythm. We're going short, long. Even though 8th notes are the same rhythm, we can alter note length. Note length is very important. Now what I'm doing here is I'm controlling the note length actually with my plucking fingers. I'm just going alternate plucking, just going index, middle, all the way. But I'm just catching, I'm starting with the index, and I'm shortening the note by gently placing my middle finger on the string. And then I'm letting the second one ring out a little longer, and you get this short, long kind of feel. I actually don't have to do anything with my fretting hand, because usually what you do is you play a note, you lift up off this, and the note stops. And you can do that as well or in combination, but this is how I'm doing it. Okay, one of the key concepts I want you to get down is to be tapping your foot at all times. And with 8 notes, you've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and that's how you count it. That's 8 in one bar. Very, very important to get used to counting and tapping your foot to play in time. You can use the backing tracks to really hone your sense of time and your internal clock. I'm just using my second finger and quickly shifting, or instead of playing on the fingertip, you can just play where that crease is, the first crease behind that knuckle, and roll your finger to play on the fingertip on the 3rd fret of the E. If you do play the A at the 5th fret of the E string, then you have to have a quick shift to the 1st fret to the F. If you're just starting out, that hand shift will be a bit more difficult, so that's why you would probably stick to the open string. Always have a finger getting ready to play the next note. That's really important part of bass technique. Okay, so that's the basic thing that you're going to do for this bass line. Here's a quick 2-minute theory breakdown on what's going on here. We're in the key of C. That means the scale of C major. I'm going to put all the shapes and everything I talk about in the PDF that goes with this lesson, but it's essentially C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Those are the notes. And you want to learn them absolutely everywhere. A chord can be made up from these notes by playing the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th note together at the same time. That's not something we as a bass player is going to do, but the backing tracks that you hear there, that's what's happening. Chords are played like that. And on each one of the different notes of the major scale, there are 7. You can do the same thing. You can get the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th, play them together and get a chord. So the chord progression for every single one of these 10 bass lines is the same. It's C, G, A minor to F. The C is the 1 chord, G is the 5 chord, A minor is the 6 chord, and F is the 4 chord. And that is what we're doing for every single bass line. Because we're in the key of C, all I did there was I was embellishing, or just making the line a little bit more interesting by playing notes of the scale. Just leading down, C, B, A, G. So my first chord is, the root note is C, and then I'm going to G. So I'm just... There, I was just playing D, C, B, G to hit that A on beat 1 for the A minor chord. The little M means minor. And they're just C, B, A, G, F. So that's just one thing that you can do. Know the notes of the scale, link up the root notes of the chord by playing through notes of the scale. You don't even have to stay in this register. You can go up. C, D, E, F, G. To do that, you obviously have to have a little bit of technique and knowledge of other parts of the bass, which you should do. You should play your scales in different registers. Let's move on to a country style bass line. In country bass playing, the root and the fifth is used a lot. A root is just the lowest point of a scale or chord. Think about the roots of a tree. So that's a C in this case. On the first chord, it's a C. And to find a fifth, so if I just said root 5, that's the fifth of the scale, you just treat the first note as 1 and walk up 5. And you get the note G. There's a very nice, easy pattern on the bass. Wherever your root note is, you just go 2 frets across this way, 1 string down to the floor, and you get the fifth. That note can also be put down the octave, and this is an octave pattern here. So I'm on the G on the 5th fret of the D string. If you go 2 frets down towards this way and drop down 2 strings, that's the next lowest G, and this is an octave pattern. Something that we'll see later on in the disco bass line, but that's a pattern you really want to know. So that G, you can put down the octave. So we can go up to a 5th, and this is from the root of C, 3rd fret A string. We can go down to the 5th. Both times you're going C, G, okay? That pattern happens a lot in lots of different styles of bass playing, but in country it happens a lot. And so all you want to do, well, let me just show you the exact bass line first. So that's the first bar, we're going down to the 5th. And now we're going to go to the G. The root note has changed to the G chord, G major. Those are the chord symbols at the top. The little M means minor, and when there's no letter after, or no little M after it, it just means major. Okay, so we've got C major, G major, A minor, F major. But musicians don't really say C major, they just say C, G, A minor, F. Okay, that's how you do it. So, see in that bar, we're just going from the root up to the 5. It's that same pattern, 2 across, 1 down. And then we've got, we're going from the A down to the 5th, which is the E. I've got open strings here, so I've got to be very mindful to mute them, to stop them. They're only quarter notes. These are quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. To stop them, just have your fingers nice and straight and lightly touch against the strings, and the note will stop. Not too much, so that you get a noise. Could play the A on the 5th fret. Lots of players like to play open strings fretted because you get way more control over the note that way. Okay, then we got the last bar. We've got root 5 again. Going up to the octave, there's that same octave pattern, so an octave up from the F. So F, C, F. Now, the reason that I wrote this not to go back to the C, the 5th of the F, is that the repeat is C, and you generally don't want to land on the root note too early. So that's why I did that. It's very, very simple. If you watch my hand here, it's sort of set in a shape. I'm playing the fifth, not with my third finger, but with my little finger. There's a little bit less of a stretch for me there. You can use your third if you want. But I've got my hand set in that shape. I'm not moving anywhere until now, where I need to go to the first fret. Same thing as the previous example. We're in the same key. That's why I wrote this lesson, really just to show you the same set of notes with a few different techniques, with a few different approaches, certainly approaches to rhythm. You can make up and play lots of different bass lines, basically using the same thing. So we would do the same thing to connect up chords here. Let's use roots and fifths, and then some notes from the scale to connect up. So there, those are quarters, da, 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 and double that as eighths. And I just did that, walked up the scale, landed on beat 1 on the G. That's a little bit awkward what I did there, but root 5 octave, and then I just went A, G, F to land on the F. You could keep everything down here, by the way, without playing anything further than the third fret. So if you're having a bit of difficulty moving around from that and you're a beginner, then stick to there. So you have two options. Play the bass line exactly to the backing track, get used to that, and then start to use some of these ideas to break out and to make up your own things. Next up, we have a Latin style called Bossa Nova. The rhythms are different here, but it's actually very similar to country, where we have a root and 5. Lots of Latin music does that. We've got the exact same pattern, so let's remind you of that. We've got the third fret of the A string, that's the note C. And if you go 2 frets across, 1 string down, that's your fifth, that's your root 5 pattern. And here, the way I've notated it here is that when we go to the A, we'll be doing it on the 5th fret, so very slowly. So we got a quarter note, and that little funny squiggle there is a rest. It's an 8th note rest. So the next note is to be played on the offbeat. So here's a little tip for you here. So this is actually quite fast. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Although you can actually feel it half time, but let's stick with this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you should be tapping your foot about that speed. When your foot hits the ground, you've got the beat 1, 2, 3, 4. And when your foot rises, you've got the off beats 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And why that's important is because sometimes those notes are quite hard to feel. You've got the squiggly line there as a rest, an 8th note rest. So 1, 2. When your foot lands on 2, that's a rest. And the next note is to be played on the up. So very slow, it's 1, 2, and. That one there. So if you're tapping your foot and you're very confident with tapping your foot, which if you're starting out, that can be quite difficult in itself, but it's a major thing to learn. Tap your foot and then get used to the fact that you've got beats and on beats and off beats. Okay, so once you've got the rhythm, you've got it. It's dun, 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 all the way through. There's the G coming up. That's a shift, that's a hand shift, that's another fundamental technique that you're going to get in bass. And one of the benefits of using patterns like this, instead of going to an open string at this point, is you can just shift and keep your hand set in this shape. That's something you need to work on, is just the gaps between your fingers. You can use this to work on that. This is a big jump from the 5th fret to the 1st fret. Nothing's saying that you can't play that last A open. And that gives you time to shift. It's lots of different things. It's just suggestions. You can do whatever you like. You can play. In fact, I urge you to also try the A bar, open string A, and then 2nd fret of the D string. That's an E. So is that. It's a good thing to realize on bass is that you have different points to play the same notes. Those are all exactly the same E's, different pitches. You wouldn't play it up there, that makes no sense here. That's the bass line exactly. And with this bossa nova sort of Latin style, we've got slightly more syncopated rhythms. These are the beats. And syncopated is when you've got notes off the beats, those eighth notes we talked about before. But you can be tapping your foot. Keeping things simple, but just putting a little bit more in there in terms of rhythms. I went to an octave on that A minor bar. As you develop your sense of rhythm, you'll find that playing along to backing tracks will keep you in the groove. As long as you can, you've got your technique down, you know where the notes are, you know where you're going, you can start to build up to playing along to these tracks. See how we're shifting the hand there? Very, very common technique. Next up, we have a reggae line. The music looks a little scarier here because we've got 16th notes, but the tempo is so slow that at this speed, 16th notes are where you have 4 in every beat. These are the beats. So some people count it 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. You've got 16 in a bar. One of them is 1/16th of a bar. That's why they're called 16th notes. So the rhythm is the same throughout here. And we're using triads. This is something I want to teach you. So let's do the bass line first. I'm playing the C on the 3rd fret of the A string, E on the 2nd fret of the D string, and G on the 5th fret of the D string. You can, of course, play that G open string, and I urge you to try that as well. If you do that, as you have finished the Gs, and you come back to play this E, deliberately get a part of that underside of your first finger to stop the G. Otherwise, you get 2 notes ringing. You don't want that. So that's often why people don't play open strings, because, as I said earlier, they're easier to control. Very quick bit of theory. This is a triad. Here's the scale. Absolutely learn that off by heart. The pattern, the names of the notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Up and then down, okay? Because a triad is very easy to explain once you understand that. It's just the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th notes of that scale. Okay? And you have a major triad there. And since the next chord is also a major, you can just drop your 2nd finger down to the 3rd fret of the E string, that's the note G. And you've got a G major triad. That's why patterns are really handy, really useful. Then we have an A minor triad. I'll just freeze here for a minute. My first finger is on the 3rd. More correctly, I should say it's a major 3rd. Why? Because there exists a minor 3rd. All you would do, by the way, to get from a major to a minor 3rd, is you just drop that note down that way, 1 fret or 1/2 step. Okay, everything else stays the same. But we don't have a G minor, we have an A minor. And there are different ways of playing a triad. I've got lessons on that actually, which will show you. But essentially, an A minor triad is just the 1, the 3, the 5. It's A, B, C, D, E, A, C, and D. I've notated it that way, fret 5, 8, and 7. You can play it open, and then 3rd fret, and then 2nd fret, D string. Or 5th fret of the E, 3rd fret of the A, and 7th fret of the A. It's one of the little tricky bits about bass is that there are different ways of playing exactly the same thing. There's no real right or wrong here. It's just what sounds good, really. So we got this. It's reggae, so I'm trying to be as relaxed as possible. I really don't want to rush, especially those 16. So you're tapping your foot, you're making sure you're breathing, your posture's right so you're not tensing up or speeding up, slowing down. The most important things as a bass player is to be in the groove, to be playing in time, to anchor the whole group, okay? I have 2 pickups on this bass. What I should probably do is solo that front one, play a bit more over the neck. Oh, actually, use a bit of palm muting. Get the fat side of the palm up against the end of the bridge there. Play with the fleshy part of the thumb. Quite a good reggae tone there, just fattens things up a bit. That's also a major triad, the F there. The open string being that major third. Here, in terms of embellishment, reggae lines, you'll often hear them just sticking to the same line. Really not too many fills going on there. It's all about the tone and it's all about the feel. So on this one, just practice that. Often in pop, you just hear simple bass lines, but little hooks, little things that grab your ear. So here we've got, similar to the Bossa Nova, we've got an interesting rhythm here. We've got a dotted quarter followed by an eighth note. You count that like this. The first note lasts for 1 and 2 for 3 eighth notes. The dot just adds half the value on. So it's a quarter note. Half the value of a quarter note is an eighth note, and in total that's 3 eighths. I know that sounds a bit like maths, but the upshot is that you count 3 eighths. That's 1 and 2, and then the next note is on the following and. 1 and 2 and. 1 and 2 and. And that little thing there is a tie. So that's the rhythm. And again, when you're tapping your foot, 1, 2, and. That is the up. That's the offbeat. I can't recommend enough doing a little bit of basic reading. That's a very good way to study music and to study common bass rhythms, of which this is one. Now that's a little bit tricky there. This is on the G. We've got our root, the G. Now we've seen that before. That was the 5th, right? That next note there, which is 2 across from the 5th and then up. That's the octave, the 8th note. In the scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. That's number 9, okay? So that pattern there, that's a 9th. Very common to hear that. You can slide up to it as well. I've just heard that so many times I had to include that. And we've got A, same rhythm as first bar. Same thing going on there. Now, on the G and the F, where you've got this little jump, there are a few ways to play this. Okay, so first up, you could go first finger, shift up a little to get your second finger there, and then your little finger you can stretch across to this. Or you can do a very quick hand shift. If you do this, you have to have a bit of a bigger stretch, which if you're a beginner, which will be a bit more difficult, especially down there. But really what's going on, I'm just doing very quick shift. And I'm not overstretching. If you feel any pain, do stop. What I did in the demo line was going a little bit even further than a 9th. And all this comes from is just learning your patterns, learning your triads, your arpeggios, all these things like this. Triad, root 3rd, 5th, arpeggio, root 3rd, 5th, octave, and there are different types of arpeggios. And it's just these notes, in this case from C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Those are just the notes, okay? So, that was my root, my 5th, and my 9th. And I really recommend that you know the notes, both in terms of the names, G, D, A, but also that's a root, that's a fifth, that's a ninth. That's actually easier because you can move these patterns around. You don't need to know the names of the notes. You just know that's a root, that's a fifth, that's a ninth, the pattern. I'm just doing root, fifth, nine the whole time, and the patterns will stay the same. And just through experience, I know that if I go from a ninth 2 frets higher, that's a tenth, which is the major third up the octave. And all you want to do really is just spend a lot of time thinking in this way, and you'll sort of match the patterns to the theory, and you can bring the theory to life by. In terms of taste and what you play and in a band, or if you're doing a recording, that does come from experience. You know, what is too much? Who knows? This might be too much what I'm doing here. So on the F, you can do exactly the same pattern as the G because they're both major chords. Now there, I just did it on the minor. We have a root, a fifth, and a 9. That all works. That's all the same as the other patterns. But I know, because this is a minor chord, going 2 frets up would get me that tenth I told you about before. That's a major. In this case, because it's minor, I go up 1 fret. These are just things that you learn, that you pick up, and that you know work. That's it for part 1. In part 2, I've got 5 more bass lines. I'm going to go through it exactly like this. It's going to be exactly the same chord progression, the same notes, the same kinds of things, but we alter the tempo, we alter the rhythm. Obviously, the backing tracks will be different. It sounds different. So this is the whole point of music. You just have a few core fundamental principles. Make sure that your technique's good. So always work on that. You know, hold the bass properly. Make sure that this hand isn't grabbing the neck. Be relaxed. Keep your wrist, you know, straight and relaxed. And be able to play these scales up and down. Know what a triad is. Know what your octaves are. Know what your fifths are. You're combining technique. That's very important, because if you just start and you can't play very well, you'll get frustrated. So technique, I really recommend you focus very strongly on that. Once you've got your technique together and you start to understand a few of these fairly simple concepts, you can then get to a point where you're starting to improvise. And that's, you know, why I'm writing these lessons. And I do a lot of lessons based around these ideas. So look out for that second part. I'll link to it. I'll link to the backing track and the PDFs with all of this stuff in it. And if you do have any questions, let me know. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.